the witching hour is about talking about things that are, for the most part, unconventional. They're not supposed to fit into a neat little category of science. They're not supposed to fit into a neat category of skepticism. We talk about stuff here that sometimes sounds outrageous, but that's why we want to talk about these things, because they are interesting and they are outrageous, and it's not the norm, and it's possible. And that's the most exciting part, I think, is that these experiences that people have are very, very real, and we want to explore those as much as possible without having somebody make it difficult for them, because, you know, it's hard enough, I think, in the real world to express yourself in this way without having somebody say, wow, well, you're fucking crazy or you're full of shit. It shouldn't be that way here, because we're, for all the most part, anonymous. We're all comfortable here. There's people who are introverted that come to the show, and I don't think they deserve to feel any more either outcasted or embarrassed or concerned about other people think. You know, we're just here to talk, not be dickheads to one another. And we never are, really. There's only maybe one or two people that I can think of that have crossed the line here and there. But and, you know, it's kind of a shame when it's an adult doing it, because I expect that out of a kid. But the irony behind that, one acting childish is not in touch with his subconscious. So for him to talk about how you have to be 6 years old to be all about your subconscious, well, I commented that the magic is dead for him, because he's twice my age, acting childish, but cannot embrace his subconscious mind enough to at least consider the possibility that these things are real. So that's something I just wanted to comment on last night. All right, so I'd like to welcome you guys back to the Witching Hour again tonight. I'm your host, Leviathan. Last night was a very interesting night, to say the least. We were talking about ghosts and personal experiences with shadow people. You know, shadow people is something that just keeps coming up. And I have the pleasure of having the video player working up again. Glad that there is such thing as public school. Otherwise, we probably wouldn't have the video player. So I do want to open up the show, but again, letting you guys know that there is a picture. You know, there's some people that get this kind of confused. So I'm gonna start either doing this differently or try to make this as clear as possible. So everyone can see this picture here. I always put a picture here either for the theme of the show or just the YouTube channel. Sometimes it changes. But behind this picture back here is another picture. You can't see this picture back here. So I want to make that very clear. That picture that you cannot see is the picture that I want you to try and envision. Somehow with your intuition, your subconscious. Don't try to guess really hard. Don't try to do that. Just try to feel what comes to your mind, basically. And just stick with your first guess, and we'll reveal it at the end of the show. And this is sort of a way to kind of gauge your intuition. Just something a little fun that involves the whole audience. I find that it's interesting. Last night we got some pretty good hits, I think. Last night was a couple of nights, and it was something interesting when someone said, eyes, I see an eye, something like that. And it's something similar to this. They basically said eye, and so that was a definite hit. I remember that clearly. So that was pretty cool. We've had some other ones in the past. I have a thing with cats, I guess. I'll try not to put any more cats. But anyway, this whole thing with shadow people, I just find so interesting. I don't have any experience with shadow people. I really don't. But there's a lot of people here that do. And for those of you that really don't know what a shadow person is, I'd like to direct your attention really to the video player. I'm so anxious to play this thing finally after so long. So I'm going to go ahead and start out here. You want to turn up your volume all the way for a moment. And I'm just going to play you this video as an introduction to shadow people, at least a history of the shadow people. Interpretation, what shadow people, I guess, are. Lots of people have different interpretation of the shadow people. Sorry about that. So you can raise your hand on the bottom right. You will see the option there. Took it away for a moment. I don't know how that happened, but so apparently, and I've never seen that video before. So apparently, according to her, shadow people are a psychological manifestation, I guess. That may or may not be the case in everybody's case. I'm sure that's not the case at all. And as far as the Slender Man is concerned, I've only recently, and when I say recently, I mean in the span of maybe about a year or two, barely heard about this character. I really don't know if this is just a mere creepy pasta, if you will, which is just I think just a story, if I'm not mistaken, or if it's based on some reality. I'm really not too sure. I don't think that is the case, but I don't think the Slender Man counts as a shadow person. I could be wrong, but I don't think the Slender Man is an entity based on reality. I could be wrong. Like I said, this is just what I remember reading, but I have absolutely no knowledge or experience with what you call the Slender Man. Sunny, let me give you the megaphone here for a moment here so you can interject.
I've got a few things that I want to say. First of all, the shadow people phenomenon, really widespread. I've listened to a lot of paranormal talk radio, and even back before Art Bell died, when he had his show, people would call in all the time with shadow people stories. It's just a really common phenomenon. Really quick, I'm going to touch on where the origins of the Slender Man are. That came from something known as the Something Awful forums, and it was kind of like a fiction site where people would write horror stories. And there was a challenge to Photoshop this creepy, tall, slender man into photographs and write stories about it. So that's where it came from. However, have you heard of something called the Tulpa theory? Or do you know what a Tulpa is?
No, I don't. Explain that to me, please.
You're going to love this. It's very cool. Tulpas are a manifest, like something that you, okay, so a lot of people have this belief that depending on how much someone believes in something, that gives it energy. Like the more you believe in something, it gives it energy and can make it real. So Tulpa theory is the concept that if enough people believe in something or are thinking actively about it, it becomes real. And there's actually a really interesting phenomenon where a group of people came together and tried to create a tulpa. And they actually created this, I'm not quite sure all the details about this story. It could be totally made up, but this is what I've heard. People came together, came up with this character for someone who had been deceased, who had this whole big long life story. They had all these facts, and they all focused really hard on believing in this thing, and they actually had paranormal activity, like with a ghost box or something like that, that actually culminated together to bring forth all of these things they had put into it. So they had created a tulpa. It's Tulpa. That's how you spell it. I really recommend everybody look into it because it's really cool. But yeah, that's my 2 cents on it.
Okay, so that's very interesting that you mentioned that. That opens up a whole new realm of discussion because here we talk about the possibilities of everything and anything. Is it possible? And keep in mind, I have different types of people in my audience, people that are Christian, people that are not. So you know where I'm going with this. Is it possible that God, or their Christian concept of God, is actually a tulpa effect, so to speak, a collective consciousness of belief manifesting itself into a real phenomenon, if you will, you know? I know that prayer, for example, is a very powerful thing, and a lot of it has to do with your mind, your subconscious, and your intentions. Your intentions are very powerful, and directing those intentions towards somebody collectively, especially group prayer, this type of thing, does have an effect. And I forgot exactly what study it was that I read, because this was so many years ago that I remember hearing about this or reading about this. And collective energy such as prayer is a legitimate phenomenon. It is a real, verifiable, objectively verifiable phenomenon. So that's another field of study that I kind of wish science would pursue full on, because the mind can send something. I don't know if they're frequencies. I don't know what it is. Intentions. We'll just call it magic, because that's really what it is. Science has not really come up with the definition of that. So your intentions towards somebody can have an effect, positive, negative. So that's something that I've talked about before, especially when it comes to like voodoo dolls and stuff like that. I have touched upon that. So, Sonny, I'm not sure if you raised your hand again, but let me give you back the megaphone just in case you did. I wasn't too sure.
No, down. But while I've got the megaphone, though, I will tell you,
Sure.
the reason that I brought up Tulpas is because, the shadow people phenomenon is so widespread. I think that might have to do with maybe a few people had this experience at first and told the story, and then it got into people's minds. So on a larger scale, more and more people are thinking of it, and it manifests itself. What you're thinking of will manifest itself in your life. So that's where I think the whole Tulpa theory ties in.
That raises some questions with me. I remember talking about the Ouija board not long ago, and bringing up the incidents of so-called possession and the need for exorcisms and stuff like that. Ever since that movie came out, there's been such a high number and incidents of possessions and people in need of an exorcism, supposedly. Is it possible that it's a collective type, not just like a hysteria? I mean, that's also possible. But is it possible also that it's a collective conscious expectation of something? Is it possible that these people have created this type of phenomenon, possession and the need for exorcisms, versus it just being one person that goes nutty psychologically? Is it possible that that person is legitimately possessed? I don't think it's unreasonable to assume that these things could actually occur. Whether or not it's the devil is arguable, and I personally don't feel that is, I'm not going to say possible, but probable. However, just like God, it's possible people created God with the Tulsa effect that you mentioned. Maybe it's possible people created the devil with the Tulsa effect. I mean, that brings a whole new door of questions that I did not consider until you mentioned it right now. So that's interesting. Just off the fly, consider. So thank you for that, Tulsa effect. And I actually looked up on YouTube. There's Tulpas, yes. There's quite a few videos on Tulpa, how to make a Tulpa, the Tulpa phenomenon, which is about 5 minutes long. Tulpa theory, yes. You know what? Let's delve into this just a little bit further, and then Well, I apologize for the fact that that video was so low, and the volume was so low. I couldn't really hear it as well. However, the gentleman in the video states how it's a mere hallucination, and pretty much nothing more, not being able to have an effect in the real world. I tend to disagree with an absolute suggestion like that. I feel that thoughts are things. Thoughts are made up of something. Your intentions, your feelings, your subconscious, it's all matter. It's all relative, and it can have an impact in the real world. And I feel that a tulpa is an intelligent thought form. So that's very interesting. That's a very interesting video. And I find it relative too, because of everything we were talking about. Adam, go ahead. You have the megaphone here. What do you think?
Yeah, I can believe that for sure. Because you're manifesting something that you're kind of asking for, such as a Ouija board or summoning a demon or whatever. But like for my case, like where I see shadow people ever since I was 6, I didn't know anything about that when I was 6. So I don't know if that relates to what I'm experiencing, because I was so young and I didn't know anything about ghosts or shadow people when I was that young.
I mean, people have these experiences, and the video described this as just a hallucination. Well, even if that were true, the point that he didn't quite hit home is the fact that all experience is real. And even if it's not something that you can touch, something that's not tangible, your experience, your reaction is real. I've mentioned this before plenty of times in my talks, because I find that it's important to remember your reaction to these phenomena is what count. I've already talked about how people have died in their dreams as a result of what they've experienced. I mean, a nightmare is just a dream. That's what your conscious mind's going to say. It's just a fucking dream. It's not real. But what they leave out of the picture is your reaction to these things. It's not so much the event itself. It's not so much the imaginary friend. It's not so much the hallucination. It's your reaction to this stimulus that brings about the result in the real world. The people that have died in their dreams, for example, having a nightmare and stuff like that. The reaction was, that's as real as it gets. So, it's really a thought-provoking phenomenon. It's not so cut and dry and black and white. It's just, well, it's the hallucination and nothing more. No, your mind is way more powerful than people give it credit for. Go ahead, Sunny. What do you think?
I just wanted to reply to Adam. I do think that you did have that experience when you were a kid. My point to bring up the Tulpa theory was because of experiences like yours, people get it in their minds. And I think that combining that with the whole Tulpa theory phenomenon is the reason why there are so many shadow people experiences, especially from people that were already in the paranormal community to begin with, that had an interest in paranormal activity. That's the whole reason why I brought up the Tulpa theory. But I totally believe that you really did have that experience when you were a kid. I've heard other people share similar stories as well. So.
I think it's possible too that these shadow people, and let me give you the mic there, Adam, can respond to that. I think it's good that these people that have these experiences, that not all shadow people are manifestation of one thing. They're not all keys. They're not all extra dimensions. They're not all just hallucinations. So it's boring to just try to get as much data as possible. But anyway, go ahead, Adam. What do you think?
Hold on a second.
Because she said that the Tulpa theory. You've had these experiences since you were like 6 years old. Is it possible also that the Tulpa theory, or what the definition of the Tulpa theory is just a mere hallucination? Is it possible that that's also what created these shadow people? It's just like a fear, like an intelligent thought form, not necessarily an extra dimensional or being or an ET. Is that also a possibility in your mind?
Yeah, anything is possible. I always say this. It's kind of like, there's so many possibilities of it being something, whether it be something negative or a spirit, or it could be something I'm manifesting. But I've never had any horrible experiences as a kid. I was too busy playing Nintendo or going outside playing laser tag.
Yeah.
I don't recall of any. I never watched horror movies as a child. So I don't know. I know my grandmother, she was clairvoyant as well. She told me later on that when I was a teenager in high school that she sensed spirits and she did a lot of psychic readings for people and stuff like that. So I don't. Maybe it's something that was passed on. You know.
Yeah. I watched a shitload of horror movies when I was a kid, and here I am now. No shadow people, no nothing like that. Unfortunately, I wished, but that's not my case. Let's see here. Go ahead, Sonny. Not sure if you raised your hand up there again, but
I need to remember just to unclick that. Spoken. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I should be paying attention. I'm sorry about that. Chris, go ahead.
Hey, so I think Captain may need to get a psyche eval or something. I don't know, with all these crazy shadow people. You see, I'm joking. I know about that. It's from last night. But you were bringing up the point earlier of prayer, right? So in the Christian Bible, they tell you, yeah, prayer is great, but prayer is also better when there's two or more gathered and praying for whatever it happens to be, right? This is kind of why we have congregations as well now. But then there's also the point of so that'll be like the kind of energies that they're trying to put out to God or whoever they're praying to. Same is the same with when you're trying to set up for a ritual. You know, you can bathe yourself, or you put on the incense to put the smell into the air. You set the mood lighting, light some candles, whatever you're doing. All that kind of energy, I think, is what's really affecting all these outcomes, whether they're positive or negative, to whatever you're trying to reach an end to.
Most definitely.
I think that's
And there's a reason why it's called the intellectual decompression chamber, because essentially you're suspending your conscious awareness. You're, for lack of a better term, you're willfully being stupid, and that is something that has been written. Something I remember reading, and there's nothing wrong with that, because you're supposed to have nothing but emotion, not so much a conscious thought as to what this is. You're supposed to feel it out when you're doing a ritual, for example. Well, you're supposed to be totally emotional. No holds barred comes out. You're not supposed to think about these things. Not only would that dilute the outcome you wish for, but that's just not where magic operates. Your subconscious mind, responsible for your breathing, emotions, all that stuff, your magic takes place. Intellectual decompression chambers. So, I mean, being stupid it's a little, it's a rough way to describe it, but essentially that's what you're doing. You're suspending your disbelief. You're getting rid of your conscious, no nonsense perspective just for a moment to open up your mind, so to speak. And that is a necessary step to accomplish magic. And there's some people out there that are just too high and mighty to humble themselves to the possibility of magic. Well, I don't be stupid. I'm not stupid. This kind of nonsense. Thinking objectively, the gentleman I had last night, I highly doubt would be capable of doing that at all, because I think he was tooting his horn a little too much and not willing to verify real magic for himself, which is why he had to create magic for himself by being a magician. I know a thing or two about stage magic and stuff like that. And let me tell you, it's a shame when somebody uses it to replace their identity instead of enhance their life or their view on things. But one of you guys here raised your hand up and put it back down. Don't be shy. If you have a question, feel free to ask. Great discussion we're having here. The Tulpa effect. So, I've never heard of that. Never heard of that until you brought it up. But now I have something to label this collective phenomenon. I want to read more into this because I wouldn't be surprised if religious people were pretty much being, lack of a better term, to this phenomenon. Hey, you have the megaphone.
Thanks. I was gonna ask Sunny if she could elaborate more a little bit on the Tulpa effect because I'm still a little confused about it, and maybe just if she could explain a little bit more.
Yeah, I did quite a bit of research into this because I was fascinated by it. I actually started looking into it when there was, you remember when Slender Man was like huge all over the news? There were people like having psychotic breaks and saying that Slender Man made them do things. A lot of people were talking about tulpas at that time, so I looked into that. And what would you like to know specifically about it?
Everything.
Okay, so essentially the theory is that if you put a lot of thought and intention towards believing in an entity, it becomes real because thoughts and intentions are power. It's the whole reason why magic, works. People that believe in magic. It's kind of complicated because in a way, part of the theory is that you are creating a willing hallucination. You are essentially inducing psychosis in yourself, creating a tulpa. But there is another belief that when you create that tulpa, it actually becomes real and could actually influence other people, with or without their knowledge. I actually just sent Leviathan over Discord. I saw you in the AltSpace Discord. That's how I found you. I'm not a creepy stalker. Anyway, the study that I sent him was of something called, I think they named the tulpa Philip something. This was back in 1972. A group of people in like a psychic group or whatever you want to call it. They got together and wanted to test the tulpa theory, so they all focused their intention and worked really hard on believing in this Philip character that they all created. And they got together in the room. I'll have to reread the study to make sure I'm getting this right, but I'm going off memory from reading about this a couple of years ago. Basically, they sat together and did essentially a seance, and have a seance to and get Philip to interact with them, and Philip apparently did. There were things that they were asking the spirit and were able to communicate with it. And this character they created that was not based on any real person, living or dead, interacted with them, if you believe the study. But that's essentially what a tulpa is, and I really hope that I explained it well enough. I can answer more questions, though, if you want.
Yeah, thank you. Actually, that helped a lot. Like, you were explaining it earlier, and I kind of got it, but I was a little confused about it. But you actually just helped everything click. So, thanks.
Hey, no problem. I'm happy to help.
Inducing a willful psychosis, I think is awesome because you're essentially experiencing a form of controlled chaos, if you will. And I think the difference between willfully inducing this state of mind, willfully being stupid, essentially, I don't think is necessarily stupid or psychotic because you're aware of this stuff. People that are psychotic are not aware, self-aware of their psychosis, at least not for the most part. And the same can be said about stupid people. Now, forgive me for saying that because everybody wants to believe they're intelligent, and that is a form of cognitive bias. Well, I'm not stupid. There's no way. Everyone is subjectively thinking that they're not stupid, and everyone thinks that way about everyone else. That's cognitive bias. And I tend to not encourage that. It's not an error in thinking, despite what the definition says, because we're all wired that way. We all are social creatures, and we all more or less gravitate towards certain groups. And in those groups, you will find collective herd mentality, a collective group of thinking for the most part, and that is cognitive bias, basically rooted in subjective interpretations of reality, kind of filtering reality through a lens, especially a groupthink lens. And I tend to champion individuality over group. And so when I say that people that are stupid are not self-aware, I could be talking about me. I could be talking about a lot of people. I mean, that's the whole point about coming from a true position of neutrality. I'm always willing to be mistaken, and I think everybody should be willing to not be on an absolute. Well, I know the absolute truth. I am absolute about this. That you set yourself up, I think, when you have that type of mentality. You should always be open to opposing views. And as I've said, that's the only way to cultivate true reason. So, hey, did you raise your hand up again? I'm going to give you the mic just in case you did.
No, I didn't.
Okay.
But I actually do have another question for Sunny, if that's okay. Was in the case that you read, because the group, they said that the Tulpa was interacting with them. Was there anybody outside of that group that Philip interacted with?
I don't remember. I'd look up the experiment yourself. If you just Google Tulpa experiment Philip, you'll find it. And Tulpa is spelled Tulpa, like pizza. So
Okay.
Tulpa. So if you just look it up, yeah. I mean, I got pizza on the brain. I bet you can guess what I had for dinner. But yeah, that's how you can find that. And I wish I could remember off the top of my head, but I can't. That would be a good test, though. Maybe we should all kind of work together and make a Tulpa, and then like tell the Tulpa to go mess with somebody else and see if they react.
Oh, kids that come in here.
Perfect. Yeah, put the Tulpa after them. Anyway.
Yeah, I am just so thankful that school is taking place now. Oh, Sunny, you had to say pizza, didn't you? All right, look, Leviathan, let's go to you for a moment here.
Okay. So I'm the one who, like, not just me, but I believe in like past lives, so you guys can go against me or whatever, but I believe, or not believe, but I've learned through my other past lives that like stupid people, I wouldn't call them quite stupid, but closed-minded people are the ones who believe more of things that they hear, so such as Tulpas or Slenderman, and because they're not open-minded, they think of what they hear is believable because they believe it from other people. And I believe as if you keep your mind open, such as meditating, being calm through situations, accepting things that come to you, no matter what it is, and just try to go through it. But also on that part, don't keep your mind too open, because you open it too much, you allow those bad things to happen, such as Tulpas. So there's a between of a closed mind and an open mind. You're too open, you get too much of the bad, and you don't see too much of the good. But when you're closed-minded, you see too much of the bad and you don't follow the good. So you have to follow on that scale of open and closed, and you just got to find where it is for yourself. Because other people, it's different. So for me to be open-minded, I meditate and just, I think on things. I concentrate on breathing, such as I put my brain as, you know, those like little monkeys you wind up and they clap their hands together. I see my brain or other people's brains as that. It continually runs and claps and rewinds and claps again. If you just meditate, steady your breathing, watch your breathing, and tell your mind just calm down, relax, that tends to help you open your mind more and allows you to see new things that maybe you've seen as a kid and you can't see now. Because when you grow older, you don't know how you did it when you were a kid, because it happened to you.
Sounds
But
like
if
a,
you, yeah,
like a balancing act.
yeah,
Or
yeah.
balancing act.
So like with the Tulpa thing, the way those happen is like beliefs in things such as I've already lost it to my mind, but if you do the rituals or whatever and you cast these things to be there, because that's you're believing it to be there. You're believing it's real. And because you maybe heard it or you've just seen research about it. So, but I see tulpas or whatever the other name of it was. I forget. I'm short-minded. I see them just as other spirits. So if you want to contact them, you just ask for it, or you request it. So you request a tulpa, you request a tulpa, and that's what you get. So that's what comes out, and you end up casting. Somewhat a tulpa is also like a second you. It's your mind that helps you through the way. But if you opened it too much, it allows it to help others without you knowing. Such as you know what I mean? But,
Yeah, it just sounds to me like it was a balancing act. You don't want to be too open-minded. There was a joke of being a little too open-minded. You're so open-minded, you can joke about being a little too minded. You want to be able to be just slightly uptight about a few things that you know real for you. As far as belief is concerned, again, it's all a matter of experimenting and experiencing things for yourselves, and a lot has to do with how your subconscious mind perceives this. Again, you got to remember that not everybody operates on the same frequency. Not everybody is in touch with their subconscious mind. We had quite a few, I should say, a nice demonstration of that last night. So it's really just a matter of interpretation, I think, because for what one person's tulpa is, another person's going to see that they're willing something towards them, whether it's good or bad. And it's arguable now that you've Sonny, that this tulpa thing, this whole phenomenon is the label now. I'm gonna again look into this, because I think now if people invite bullshit into their lives, it's a tulpa. I think people get the devil they deserve. You know what I mean? And I think they create that devil out of their own hell, for example. So I guess that devil or the devil could be a tulpa. It could be an expectation. You know, when you think things are evil, you attract that. Does that make sense? So I think for the most part, people that are more laid back, more calm, acknowledge that there's shit out there, but they don't say, well, you know, I might run into bad luck. I might run into some evil shit sometime in my life. I think those people that are positive and keep a good outlook on things, I think life is easier for them, because they're not creating this tulpa, this expectation of things. So I'm going to start using that word, tulpa. That's very interesting. I'm as soon as I'm done with this, I'm going to look into this as much as I can. Very, very interesting. I'm so glad you mentioned this tonight, Sonny. Very, very good. Appreciate that. Oh, wow, I had two of you. Don't know who. I not quick on the draw. A couple of you raised up your hands and put them back down again. So again, bottom right, raise your hand. You will see that option. I'll click on you one at a time. Don't be shy. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and try to look for just a little bit more information on this tulpa stuff without taking up too much time. I try to look through a video that's no longer than maybe 5 minutes, because I think that's a little too long for you guys. But there's so many videos here that do go over that 5-minute mark that I'm probably just not going play it because I don't want to stop it in the middle. So, but that's okay. This whole thing with ghosts and ETs and now voodoo and stuff like that, I think it really does kind of go back to this whole Tulpa thing. You're creating it in your mind, and it manifests itself into the real world. So, and that extends to a lot of stuff, not just magic, but I think everyday life, just your expectations, your overall attitude of what you expect out of life. I'm just, the wheels are really turning because it's something I've never heard of before, this whole Tulpa thing. So that's going to be the subject I put into the description tonight for the video I upload, all about tulpas. Amazing. Angel, you have the megaphone. Go ahead.
Another word for tulpa, or the words that you've been using is either it's all just energy, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Intention, vibration, matter itself, it's all just energy that you're reflecting.
Uh-oh. Technical difficulties. But I did hear what he said, that it's all just energy. And you know what happened one time? I was, you still there? Angel, go ahead and raise up your hand, and I'll go back to you in a moment. And
yeah, sorry, my headset was messing up for a second. Sorry about that.
Oh, you're good. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm a little bit nervous because I haven't done this before.
You're fine.
So,
but I was gonna comment though on what you had said as far as it being a vibration or an energy. I was wanting to share an experience I had a long time ago. I went to this Chinese gift shop. Really, really big store. They had food, they had furniture, all kinds of stuff. So anyway, I was wearing a necklace, and it had a stone. The stone was aventurine, green stone with sparkles in it. Those sparkles are mica. And I had cleansed the stone. I think it had a hardness of 6 or 7 on the Mohs scale, so I was able to get it wet without it integrating like salt. So I buried it, rinsed it off, and I tried to charge it with I tried to put my intentions into it. I forgot what those were because this was many years ago. And I was going through some stuff during that time. And I read somewhere that after you put your intentions into these stones, you're supposed to wake it up. And the way to do that is to expose it to a harmonic sound like a gong or something like that. And so the vibration of that gong or whatever will flow through the stone, which operates on its own frequency, and will, I guess, manifest itself into the real world. I mean, like I said, the best way I can use to describe this is an analogy of driving a car. You don't have to be a mechanic to know how to drive a car. You know that it fucking works. So what I ended up doing is taking this stone and I put it next to this gong, a huge fucking gong, and I hit it, and I put it on. And I went in front of the statue. They had some bowl with fruits in front of the statue. I don't know, some Chinese samurais or Japanese. I take that back. But it was a warrior. And he had a scythe, a big scythe. He looked very imposing. Staring at the statue, and I started feeling really weird in the center of my heart, my chest. I don't know much about chakras, but I think the heart chakra is green. Not too sure about that. And I don't know if it's relative or not, but I do remember feeling an intense form of anxiety. My heart was just racing. And this happened immediately after I put the necklace on. Never happened before, but I've never charged the stone the way I did. And I felt like it was too strong. I don't know what that was. A real experience that I had. And so I'll never forget that. Basically stones and stuff like that. I'm just using a small example. These things do have their own vibration. They have their own, they're like conduits. And I know this because even the old radios, well, radios in general operate on, what is it? Quartz, I think. And these types of things can be conduits for energy and stuff like that. So I know that exposing it to the sound I did created a wave. I don't know what happened exactly, but it's like when you throw a rock into a pond and it ripples. It had that kind of effect. And it was really strong, very profound, very uncomfortable, I guess. It was a little too strong for me. And I guess I didn't know what I was doing. Or I failed to balance it out in the right way. It was something that I still remember, but yeah, definitely happened to me. Leviathan, go ahead.
There's like a type of magnet. I can't remember what it is. It's sort of magnet. It's like a type of rock that is magnetic.
Hematite.
It yeah, I'm pretty sure it's hematite. It evolves around your energy.
Mm-hmm.
So if you cleanse it first, I usually recommend someone else cleansing it that has good energy, having good days. And when you have a bad time and you wear that ring, and you want to get it in a ring version, and when you have those bad times, it will shatter. It'll just shatter into pieces. And it depends how many cracks it shatters into, which means that's going to be like how many points you need to talk about that you're going through. So I had one ring, and I was going through bad times for years, and somebody gave it to me, and a day later I slid that ring on, and it shattered into like 10 pieces, 10 cracks. And I was telling everyone I was fine, and I was like, okay. So I need to look it up again. I'm pretty sure it's hematite, but it's something really cool. So it even evolves around other people's energy. So you got to be safe who you're wearing it around.
It almost reminds me of orgone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't remember.
Shield you.
Yeah,
are you guys familiar with Orgone? Are you familiar with Orgone, Leviathan? I'm sure some of you guys have seen the little, like the little copper coils that they have in, like those pyramid little, I forgot what epoch, you know what I mean? Yeah. Stuff like that. They have little pendant, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So that's called orgone. I believe William or Wilhelm Wright wrote about orgone. I think he discovered orgone therapy, and it kind of reminds me of that because orgone therapy. He wrote a theory that he was able to demonstrate with great success, and it had been able to reverse cancer and stuff like that. Long story short, he says that an orgasm can protect you from cancer. And the reason why I feel that has some viability to it, without information, there's people that I do know who have acquired cancer, and their personal lives weren't, because they've told me, their personal lives were a little on the empty side, a little bit on the lonely side. So that's something to remember and consider. You have nothing to lose from subscribing to that theory. So the more of those you have, the better protection you'll have against cancer. And you got to remember, cancer will affect 1 in 2 people nowadays. Everybody here has got pretty much a 50-50 chance, which is no bueno. So yeah, keep those orgasms coming, because that's apparently going to help you. But whatever way you get them, that's your business. Damien, you have the megaphone. Go ahead.
Okay.
Where are you, Damien? I can't hear you. All right. Considering what I just said, I don't think you should be here. So anyway, organ therapy, and his name was Wilhelm Reich. Reich is R-E-I-C-H. And he these boxes, these insulated boxes, essentially had, I think, some form of insulation, whatever that was. But he also covered with metal, like steel wool, more insulation, more steel wool, more insulation. And he created a box essentially out of this. And there was experiments of people sitting inside these boxes made of orgone, and then other boxes made of just plywood or whatever, same type of enclosure. And there's experiments that he conducted with people sitting inside, having these reactions. And there's actually measurements he took as far as people's anxieties. I think air quality was another one. I forget exactly what, but there was an actual difference between the two enclosures. And the scientific community touted him as a fraud, which is pretty bad. They tainted his reputation in a very negative way. They accused him of pseudoscience. They destroyed a lot of his books, and you can read the whole history about it. Very, very awful what he went through. But if you read the books and you attempt to maybe test some of these theories out, they may not work for you. But as I've said, you've got nothing to lose from at least subscribing to the theory that an orgasm can protect your health. I don't see how anything would be negative. But anyway, we are out of time here. I want to redirect your attention to the corner again. You that are new to the audience, you're going to see a picture here. And to avoid confusion, this picture here is the channel, the YouTube channel's picture. Behind this picture is another picture, a picture you cannot see. I want you to pick up on that picture's image. I want you to just go with the first thing that comes to your mind, the first thing that you feel. Try not to think too hard about it and just go with the first thing that comes to your head. One by one, go ahead and raise up your hands and I'll go to you and see what you think. Try not to take too long because then I know you're thinking too hard about this and that's not the right way to do it. So, Dumpster, you have the megaphone. What do you think is behind there?
Some kind of egg.
An egg, all right. Sonny, what do you think?
My first thought was ice cream. I might just want ice cream.
You know what? You mentioned pizza. That was evil, all right? So now I'm going to have to eat pizza tonight, which I don't know how I'm going to do. But I haven't eaten yet. Chris, you have the megaphone. What do you think?
Some kind of symbol. Symbology.
Symbology, all right. Well, there's a lot of symbols. Yeah, there's symbols, there's musical symbols, so that's vague. But let's see. If by chance you happen to pick up anything additional, feel free to raise your hand and elaborate on that if you can, if you want. Leviathan, what do you think?
Something like colorful or bright. It has to deal with some colors.
Gotcha. Something colorful or bright. All right. Well, amazingly enough, we do have some people quite a few people in the room that have not raised their hand. So it's okay if you don't want to take guests, but I'll give you guys just a little bit more time. If you want to raise your hand, you can. There we go. What do you think, Adam?
I think it's a heart.
Heart. Interesting. Shane, what do you think?
How about Iron Man?
Iron Man. All right. Interesting. Iron Man. All right. Let me see. Let me go back here just for a moment. All right. Cool. What about you? Hey, what do you think?
Star.
A star. What kind of star?
Like, one of those, like, kid drawing stars, like the yellow ones
okay.
that you see in, like, kid books.
Ah, for a second there, I thought you meant movie star. Interesting.
No.
So, Rob Dog, what do you think?
Fan, first time watcher.
Nice.
Just a quick question.
Sure.
What are we guessing? I came in late.
Oh, no problem. So you basically want to take an intuitive guess of what picture is behind the one you see right there. It's a hidden picture that you cannot see. So just go with your intuition, just the first thought that pops into your mind after asking you.
Kirby.
Kirby, all right. Here
I think
it
it's
is. Kirby. Kenji, what do you think?
I'm gonna have to go with picture of an American flag.
All right.
Right, guys.
Picture of an American. All right. Picture of an American flag. Pat Pan, what about you? What do you think?
A picture of an abandoned house.
All right. Extra base, how about you?
Something something round. Food item like a cookie.
Cookie. Oh God. So now we have pizza, and now we have cookies. You guys are bad. I'm really hungry. Okay, so we had quite a few guesses. I don't really see, other than the cookie and the pizza, I don't see a lot of guesses too related to each other. So what does that say? Just for a moment, we have a lot of random guesses that are completely opposite of one another, and they're not related, not relative. I think there's a lesson that can be learned from that. I think if we learn to maybe become more sensitive, more empathetic somehow towards each other, we can maybe create a tulpa, right, Sonny? Somehow we can maybe create this experience, become more sensitive to each other's minds. And we can do that somehow. We might be able to pick up more intuitively of what can be back there. Some people claim to be empath, clairvoyants, psychics, and I think we all have these abilities. I really, really do. But for those who say that they are, I think it's worth listening to them. I really do. Because Adam here is an empath. He's a clairvoyant. You know how I know? He said there was a heart back there. And he was right. There is a heart back there. A little bit more than that. But there's a heart. And that's basically, he got it spot on. My first spot on, almost. I'd say he left out about, maybe 20% of something else. But there is a heart there. A big one, too. So with that, you guys can go take a look at what it is back there.
A little bit of Betty Pet Boopy Boo.
Oddly enough, I can't see anything. Huh.
Oh, you can't see it?
Betty Boop.
I cannot. Let me try to read through the space. Maybe it's broken out for me. Wait a second. I'll be right back.
Something.
Actually, you know what? I'm not going to do that because I might not be able to get back in.
It's Betty Boop in front of a big heart with a heart garter on.
Interesting.
She's in a black dress.
So I found that if you're within the ballpark, that's pretty good. That's really good. And I've had people within the ballpark before. I remember
Last night, I
And I remember,
Yeah.
it's not right. I could, he said, that's really well. Right there. He didn't have to say cat eyes, just the fact that he saw an eye. Paulina saw a half circle, organic. She's got an analytical mind, a very, very analytical mind, and she guessed
We're
that.
on two different.
And there was tacos back there. That's pretty fucking spot on to me.
I assume you know what a traveler is.
Just heart. I mean, having a heart back there is the main thing. There's Betty Boop back there, but she's in front of a heart. I think that's pretty good. I want to know a little bit more about you guys that have been really close, really spot on to these things. When you guess the cat eyes, Paulina, when you guess the half circle organic, that's pretty fucking spot on. You didn't have to say tacos. You didn't have to say food. I mean, that was very specific, I think. It's the image. I asked you to think of an image, and you got it pretty spot on. Adam, you guessed heart. I mean, there's a heart back there. That's a universal shape. We recognize what a heart is. I think a heart shape is renowned worldwide. That's, I think, pretty significant. And I'd like to ask you guys what it is you guys do, if you guys meditate, if you do a little bit more about your daily lives, if you don't mind one of these days to have you up as a guest. Adam has been my guest before. Really good when he's up here because there's so much that he's experienced with more than just shadow people, being a clairvoyant after asking him this type of stuff. I think that's pretty interesting. That's pretty good. That's pretty spot on. So appreciate you guys coming out here. Yeah.
What's interesting too is my grandmother, the one that's a psychic too. She is an absolute lover of Betty Boop. She actually can draw Betty Boop, and so that's kind of weird too.
Wow. Speaking of coincidences, that's something else. Coincidences we've been all running into. I think that's part of my description too. Ever since 2020 rolled around, we've been having some pretty interesting coincidences about. So there's a connection there. There's something there that I think is very, so definitely something to consider. I'm looking forward to uploading this video. Again, you guys check out Leviathan, AltSpaceVR on YouTube. I do upload these videos. For those of you that do watch these, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will post as many of these as possible. Takes a fucking whole day to do it. I like it. So. But anyway, you guys, thank you for coming out here to join me in the Witching Hour show. It's all about you guys, each and every night. I'll be here tomorrow night. You guys be safe out there. Keep an open mind. We'll see you tomorrow. This is signing out. Who am I going to hit? Let's see. Nobody.